Hi, welcome back to episode 2 of the new season of the CI Diaries, brought to you by Wayside Publishing. Thank you so much, Wayside. I am Carrie Toth. I am a Spanish teacher, and I also am an advocate for student choice in the classroom. I want my students to feel invested in my classroom, and yet in some ways, I manipulate how they feel about that a little bit. I hope that doesn't come out sounding terrible, but I give them choices that I still have kind of control of the choices. So what I would like to present to you today is how you can approach student choice in your classroom without feeling like you're giving up complete control, because I think for educators, one of our most difficult challenges can be to give up control of student learning, of our plan book, of student seating. But I want to encourage you to let down your hair a little bit and try out a little exercise in giving students a bit of control and of choice in the classroom, and see if it has an effect for you. And if it does, whether good or bad, I would love to hear your comments. Please email us at the CI Diaries at waysidepublishing.com, or you can email me, Carrie at Wayside Publish, or ctoth at waysidepublishing.com. I would love to hear what you have to say about student choice in your own classroom. So when I was looking around at some research about student choice, one of the things I stumbled across was Robert Marzano talks a little bit about choice in the classroom, and in studies it has been linked to increases in student effort, increases in task performance, and increases in learning. And so when I think about student choice in that way, if it's going to lead my students to be more engaged, to be more on task, to learn more from a unit, then I definitely want them to feel like they have a choice in what we're learning in our classroom. I have a lot of ways to teach the same things, and so just by giving them choices of how they want to learn them or how they want to demonstrate their learning, I can make them feel like they're an important part of our classroom community, which they are. That's not the manipulation at all. I think my students are the most important part of my classroom community. I'm not there to be the boss or in charge or, keeping them all in line. I'm there to help them learn to love the language that I'm teaching them, because I want them to go out and use it in their life outside the classroom. And so I'm just looking for ways that I can make this the most positive experience for them that it can possibly be. So I actually start with choice seating. I change seats with my students every midterm and end of quarter. So about every 4.5 weeks, we are moving seats. In the first 4.5 weeks, since they're new to the classroom, new to whatever period of class they have, they're seated in alphabetical order because I need that to learn their names. I'm over 50 now, so remembering names is not coming quite as easily for me as it used to. I feel like I used to be able to know most names by the end of the first day, and now it's taking me closer to a week to get all of them down if I have a lot of new names in the classroom.
One of the ways that I like to encourage student choice is through choice seating. I have a deskless classroom, and in my classroom, I have just chairs. So on the left and on the right sides, I have 3 rows deep of 5 chairs. So I have 30 total chairs in my room, 5, 5, 5, and then 5, 5, 5. So when I do choice seating, in the first 4.5 weeks of school, I need to learn student names. I'm not as young as I used to be. I feel like I used to be able to remember everybody's name at the end of the first day. Over 50 now, does not happen like that anymore. I feel like it takes me closer to a week to be 100% sure on everyone's name. So I put them in alphabetical order for the first seating chart. But after that, I like to change up the way I seat them. So one way that I let them have some choice in their seating is to have I pick a student and then they pick who sits next to them and on down to the fifth seat of the row. But then when we start the row on the left-hand side, well, this is my left, I guess. I don't know how that is for you guys. But anyway, my left from the front of the room, I pick another student because in your classroom there are kids that will get overlooked if you don't, but they'll all end up in the back row because nobody will pick them first. So I pick them first and put them in that first seat of each of the rows, and then they pick the person that goes next to them. And then, it fills in the rest of the row with people who other people would like to sit by. If I see somebody, in the third row, I see somebody that looks like they're kind of upset because they would normally have been picked already and they haven't been picked, then I'm going to pick them and have them sit at the head of the row. I also sometimes just say, okay, the back row is off limits because this class is only 20, but you can sit anywhere you want. You know as well as I do that there are some classes you can't do that in. But also, in my experience, when it is a really crazy class like that, the crazy classes often aren't just one or two kids that you need to keep separate from each other. It's like seven, and there's no way, anyway, to keep them separate from each other. So sometimes I have gone ahead and let them just have choice seating because they think I'm letting them choose where they sit. So it makes them be a little more agreeable with me in the classroom. But I totally understand if you have some that you don't feel like that you can do that with. Besides choice seating, other choices that I give in the classroom would be sometimes the choice of the daily activities. We do a lot of reading, whether it's a reader that we're working on or whether we are studying some kind of a cultural topic or some kind of a global issue, and we are reading something to go along with it. I like to follow up reading with active games. Worksheets just don't really excite my students. And when they're doing a worksheet, they're reading a comprehension question and answering it, but we're not discussing it together. Whereas if we gamify it a little bit, I can ask them a question, they or their groups can answer, and then I can reveal the correct answer and we can talk about why it is correct, why some people's answers were not quite correct. So I get a little more input time in when we're gamifying them. But some classes love a certain game and some love a different game. So I like giving them a little control. Like this week, we're going to read 3 chapters. Do you guys have one activity you'd really love to do as one of the follow ups? And I let them feel like they have a choice. I have 3 Spanish 2 classes. So if I give each of the Spanish 2 classes the option to choose an activity that they'd like to do as a follow-up this week, all of them at some point during the week are going to get to do the follow-up that their class chose. And they all sort of feel invested in what we're doing this week because they know that I asked for their opinion. And so that's a good thing. Also, I try to offer student choice as we read. One of the things I've been working very hard toward is to build a library that has choices for every student in my classroom, wherever they are, whatever situations are facing them, their backgrounds. I want them to see themselves in the books on our shelves. And so I have carefully read I have a ton of books in my library, but before they go in the library, I read them. If they don't pass muster, they don't go in the library for the kids to read. In those books that are in my library, there's all kinds of things. There are books that are written for learners. There are little harder books that are graphic novels that are written for native speakers. But since they're graphic novels, students really like to pick them up. I have the Heartstopper series in Spanish in my reading library. It's such a great series of books, and my kids love them. They pick them up all the time. But they're definitely in the harder section of readers, where at the other end, I have simple books like Eddie el Elefante or all of the Senor Woolley graphic novels. I have the lowest novice versions in my lower end readers section so that they can start with graphic novels, end with graphic novels, so they can do readers that we don't do as classroom reads. There are some books that I think make really great classroom reads. Some books I think are better for students just to kind of read on their own. And I love having lots and lots of relatively easy reads because it makes them feel so successful when they can read and read on their own. So I do let them have the choice in what they read. I don't I don't oversee them too much about their reading. We don't have a worksheet to fill out or anything because I just want them to feel like they're choosing something they enjoy and they're getting to read it. I also, and this is an idea I got from Christy Placido, when we're reading a class reader, I like to give them some choice. We read different ways every chapter. I tend to read aloud to them and not have them read aloud to me. Um, but sometimes, if they're going to read kind of on their own, I'll let them choose. I kind of call it reading club. I let them choose the way that they want to read. So I have a group of students who are superstar readers. They know who they are. They might be in the Grupo Independiente, the independent group of readers, and they take their book, they read the chapter, they answer some comprehension questions. Then they can pick anything they want to from the reading library to kill time until the rest of us get done. There's a second group. I do have a large group of kids that are pretty confident about their reading, but they feel better when they can just check with somebody else. So they're the cooperative group. And the cooperative group reads together on a chapter of a reader, and then they do some kind of a creative thing, like make a mural that represents the things that happened in this chapter so they can talk together about what are we going to put in our mural. Then there's Grupo Alpha, the Alpha group. That's my group. They come with me and I read aloud to them and ask them all kinds of questions and comprehension check with them to make sure that they know what's going on. This tends to start out as a smallish group because nobody wants to act like they need the teacher's help. But then as the time progresses and we are having fun, we're laughing, they don't have any follow-up activities because I'm asking them all the questions as we go along through the read. My group tends to grow. And so I always end up with the biggest group at the end of it all. I let them self-level in those groups, and sometimes they learn a lesson. If they put themselves in the independent group and then they couldn't do it, they learn that they have to come over and join my group to be able to understand. That's fine. They'll figure it all out on their own. Kids are such creatures of habit, like as far as following their friends to places and feeling nervous to make their own decisions on things. So don't be afraid to let them try out and fail. If you watched last episode, failure is part of the process. So don't be afraid to let them fail at being part of one particular group and then, kind of resave it by joining a different group. I also give my students unit choice. Now, this is what I was talking about with a little bit of manipulation of the students. I have a plan during the year that I want to teach, these 7 units. It does not matter to me the overall order in most cases. Now, there are some things like I want to teach about biodiversity before I teach too much about, the ecosystem in the ocean or why we would want to live with zero waste, because learning about biodiversity, learning about threats to the environment, that is kind of the start. And then we go into like a little more specific threats to biomes like the ocean, and then how do we lessen our threat on those systems. So maybe there are some cases where I have a little bit of an order that I'd like to go in, but I often will take 3 units that I know, okay, I know biodiversity has to go first, so we're going to do it sometime this fall, but I also can do a unit on healthcare and a unit on recipes. So what do you think, guys? What are you feeling right now? Would you like to do recipes next, or would you like to do biodiversity next, or would you like to do healthcare next? What you really feeling? And I let them vote. And then we take the vote, and I say, "Oh, well, it was so close. I think we'll just end up doing all three of them because everybody was so interested in different things. But our big winner, the most people voted for this one." So technically, you can see they didn't have a choice. They were going to learn one or all of those things anyway. I might rethink if I see that the recipe one, 0 kids marked that they were interested in doing that one. I might think, well, okay, if none of these kids in this class are interested in recipes, then maybe that unit is not the best one this year. I'm going to check that one out and put something else in. But if they all seem to be, interested in different things, but one just has more, then I'll do all three just in the order of their interests. It's it's making them feel like they have a choice when technically we still are keeping the choices in our hand. Um, you can even, I mean, sometimes I've asked them, like, what would you like to study? Because I may have a unit for it. And if not, I could surely find a song or a short video clip or something that would let them really, really have an influence on what's happening in the classroom. And it may be something that I keep for years because students just love it because it was thought of by students. And finally, I like to give them a choice on assessments too, and I hope you don't consider this sacrilege. I let them choose. Oftentimes, I let them choose if they'd like to write or speak. I have some students who I have had some students who were so worried about their poor spelling or about not being able to write the words down because we do a lot of listening in class so they can hear it in their head, but they just don't feel like they can write it down. So I have no problem with them telling me a story instead of writing me a story. On the flip side, and I know that people just really want kids to speak Spanish. You have to, someday you're going to have to talk in front of people. I know a lot of people who don't actually talk in front of people, and particularly now when you can work virtually from home, a lot of people are not talking to that many people anymore. So I had a selective mute student last year. He never spoke. I In his senior year, he came to me after class. We were getting ready to go on a Spanish club field trip to Six Flags for Fright Fest, just a fun Spanish club trip. And he said, "What do you do at Six Flags?" So, 7 words that he said to me in 4 years of studying Spanish. And I was so like blown away that he said any words to me because he hadn't spoken to his other teachers. But also, why would I? He can't even talk to me in English. He can't talk to other kids around him. He cannot stop the anxiety and be able to talk. Why would I force him to fail speaking tests because he can't do them when he was perfectly content to write for his tests? And that still shows me what he knows. And so I would just encourage you to think, can you give them multiple topics? Like if you want to go for an A plus, you're in level 2, so you're pushing toward intermediate. So if you want to go for the A plus, I'm going to need you to compare and contrast these two stories and give good reasons why they're similar and different. If you want to go for just the solid A, just kind of tell me one of the stories. Like, what were your favorite parts of one of the stories? And if you want to go from the B range, a B range would be the novice range, so making simple sentences. So give me 12 bullet points of things that happened in one of the two stories or in both of the stories. So giving them kind of some choice, some voice in how they are assessed and in how they demonstrate their proficiency. I think that's another way that I really try to give them a little bit of control. So I wonder, now that you've heard the episode, um, how do you give your students choice in the classroom? Do you give your students a lot of choice? What are you interested in trying? And if you do try some things, let me know how it goes. It doesn't always work out great. Like the last episode said, there are going to be failures of things, but I hope that choice leads you and your students to a place where you are really engaging them and they're excited about what they're learning, and you feel like they feel heard. They're listening back to you, kind of excited to be doing something that you guys have planned together. Have a really great day. I will see you soon for another episode. Nice to have you here with me. Bye bye.